Do you know what separates a YouTube video from a film or other work of art? Often it comes down to intentionality. Obviously films have big budgets, massive crews, aim for a 2-hour length and such too, but that's beside the point. A standard YouTube video is made as quickly as possible with the idea of controlling what the viewer sees being an afterthought, much to the dismay of many commenters. Many of us do our best. Scripts, storyboards, shot lists, I've got notebooks full, but nothing compares to the months or years worth of prep work for a proper film. While I don't see myself working on a feature film anytime soon, I'm always looking for ways to add more intentionality and depth to my work. I spent years amassing a hoard of good prime lenses, but lately it's been time to invest in zooms and macro lenses. Laowa let me spend about a month with their new SWORD macro cinema lenses. A few of these. I've been shooting them with my Canon R5C and the Canon C80, and it's been a lot of fun capturing textures and angles that I couldn't before. Here's 5 reasons you need a macro lens in your kit. Number 1, detail and texture. If you're trying to convey the little things, how something feels, looks up close, responds to pressure, the texture it imparts on you, you need to show it to the viewer. A macro lens will help you do that. Number 2, focus your story. The wider your focal length and framing, the harder it is to direct your viewer's eyes, and the easier it is for distractions to come into frame. Sometimes you need your viewer to just look at a singular object or detail. Number 3, working in tight spaces. Sometimes you don't have a lot of room to move around, and traditional tight lenses won't work because you can't put enough distance between your camera and your subject. Number 4, break the mold. In an era where everyone else is going wider and wider with their framing or aspect ratio, choosing to go tighter could help you stand out. Number 5, test your premise. Is your story, your theme, your message, the action happening still visible when you zoom out? What about when you zoom all the way in? Adam Savage has a wonderful video in which he demonstrates weathering a prop helmet to discuss the importance of visibility in photography. It's peak Adam being Adam, but it goes a long way to show you how to have the right questions to ask about whether the thing you want to be seen is actually being seen, whether it's a prop, a photo, whatever. So what makes the Laowa SWORD Macro Cine lenses so special? Well, for one, they cover full-frame sensors. As a full-frame shooter, I see no end of macro and anamorphic lenses sold cheaply, but only for crop sensors. It's nice to see a full-frame option. Plus, they're Cine lenses, so they've got gears for focus and for aperture pulling, and support standard filter thread sizes so that you have more control over your image. And they open up to pretty wide apertures for macro lenses. If you want to make a blurrier image, use it as a traditional lens or stop it down to reach peak sharpness without having, you have a wider point to start with. Honestly, as someone who shoots in small spaces, it's been fun to just use these as normal lenses for their respective focal lengths. I've got a 15mm here, 60mm, and 180mm on loan, and just use them as normal lenses without having to worry about that minimum focus distance. I already use telephoto lenses for extreme close-ups anyway, so these lenses just give me a little bit more flexibility. Plus they allow for some wacky goodness with this super wide 15mm. What I just said, that minimum focus distance, is the name of the game with macro lenses. What that refers to is the smallest distance between the camera sensor and the subject that you're shooting that the lens can actually focus on. The minimum focus distance on most lenses is really frustrating to work with in my kinds of environments. I'm constantly bumping into stuff trying to get the camera back far enough to focus on tighter shots, which also means I get less background separation from my subject and possibly have to crop to get the framing that I originally wanted in the first place. Macro lenses focus much closer to the front of the lens, allowing me to get more of those shots that I desire. Here's a really nice looking 16mm wide-angle Cine lens. Here's how close I can get to it before not being able to focus any closer. Now here's the Laowa SWORD 15mm macro lens. I can get so close to the lens itself that it obscures lighting on the subject, while still being a very wide angle. It's bananas. This lens made me think of another Laowa lens I've had for a long time, the 0D or Zero Distortion 14mm f4. It seems like this was the basis for the SWORD model. They're basically identical, with similar aperture performance and looks, but with nice cine gears and such instead of the more photography-oriented body on the lens that I own. There are, of course, tricks you can do to use more traditional lenses as macro lenses. I've used macro extension tubes on vintage lenses to pull the lens further from the sensor, allowing for closer focus, coming at the sacrifice of a darker, muddier image a bit, and eventually vignetting. I've added diopter filters to the front of lenses, allowing for some crazy magnification at the cost of distortion and lowered sharpness and contrast. I've also just plain cropped in from a further back shot, which works on my modern 8K RAW shooting cinema camera, but didn't produce great results on more accessible gear. Plus, I like trying to get my framing and look right in camera so I know what I'm shooting. Cropping in post alters things a bit, and I can just kind of tell, so to speak. Macro lenses have other characteristics you may want to consider as well. The first is that 0D I mentioned before. Most macro lenses are designed to provide a fully flat plane of focus so that the image doesn't distort or curve up on the edges at all. These cinema lenses are designed even more so to avoid edge or shape distortion as part of the optical design. There's also the magnification ratio. For a lens to function as a macro lens in the first place, it has to project a subject in its exact 1:1 size onto the sensor, which means if you get your camera up close on a tiny subject, that subject is captured in its exact size in relation to the sensor. My Canon 100mm f2.8 macro lens are 1:1 macro lenses, which means they capture things in their exact size, but do not magnify beyond that. This is useful when accuracy is important and you just want up-close shots. But if you want to take an even closer look at something, macro lenses can also magnify a subject even bigger than its actual real-world size. The 60mm sword lens here has a 2x magnification ratio, meaning anything it captures is projected to 2 times its real size onto the sensor, allowing absurd levels of detail to be captured. This is great for texture, superfine details, or teeny tiny objects or insects, but of course maintaining the focus plane becomes even more difficult. Speaking of which, here's a few challenges you might face when shooting super tight macro. 1. Cleanliness. I always try to get the products I film cleaned up and presentable for video, but with macro, every little hair, skin particle, hint of dust, scratch, smudge, it all is on view and looks way worse than it does to your eye. Lighting. Things tend to be a lot less brightly lit when you focus in on such a tiny portion of something compared to a wide shot. Plus, to get a good image, you'll need to stop down the lens a fair bit, which means you'll need to be blasting your subject with way more light than before. And of course, focus. Focusing in macro is pretty difficult, especially if you have to try opening up the aperture. It can often look like your plane of focus is the size of like a human hair moving across your subject. Getting it exact, especially with any moving parts or diagonal angles, is quite challenging. There's another wonderful video from Adam Savage over on Tested where they take a Starfield model that they made and film it on a virtual production set. It covers a lot of the challenges of shooting something so small. Definitely worth a watch. I love sneaking a macro shot or two into just about every video I make, whether I'm just showing the grip texture, focusing the viewer's attention onto singular buttons, or getting an up-close view of my painted D&D minis, quick cuts, or longer detailed shots. Macro shots add important variety to my videos. They can benefit product videos, prop painting and weathering videos, science and educational content, even narrative and lifestyle stuff, if used occasionally. And food videos. I love me some good macro in a food video. Of course, my personal philosophy is to try to capture as many angles I can and combine as many tools and technique as I can to get weird and unique images. More often, macro lenses are used for more clinical or sterile shots, which is okay too. I see the world through my own weird lenses, and I love letting my audience see things how I do. I have to send this kit back, unfortunately, but when I'm ready to invest in glass for my studio again, I'm grabbing a lens or two from the set for myself. My only real complaint is that not every focal length is perfectly matched in terms of filter thread and gear diameters, but I don't have a workflow that really utilizes those enough to matter. I'd love for the 15mm to open up even wider for when I do treat it as a normal lens, but using any wider aperture for macro would be nearly impossible, so not a real concern. As with all of my gear reviews, I wish I had more time with these lenses, but I'm glad I got to spend what time I have with them. Links to these lenses will be in the description. Check this link to see my latest thoughts on camera purchases, and remember to be kind, rewind.
And in case you've been wondering where I've been having a blast making videos over on the Lost Saves YouTube channel. That's my more gaming and nostalgia focused channel. Been having a lot more fun over there, posting like 3 videos a week. So go check that out and come subscribe over on the forums where you can chat with us and get early access to videos, behind the scenes videos, ad-free viewing. You can download videos to watch on your own Jellyfin server, whatever you'd like. Remember to be kind, rewind.